Our top story of the day, and that is the Colonial pipeline. We heard from President Biden just moments ago saying that fuel is flowing once again at that critical pipeline along the East Coast. He is asking motorists not to panic. We continue to see a run on gas stations up and down the coast here. And he's also got a warning for gas station owners.
And I also want to say something to the gas stations. Do not, I repeat, do not try to take advantage of consumers during this time. I'm going to work with governors in the affected states to put a stop to price gouging wherever it arises. And I'm asking our federal agencies to stand ready to provide assistance to state-level efforts to monitor and address any price gouging at the pump. Nobody should be using this situation for financial gain.
All right, as a couple of hours ago, nearly 3/4 of gas stations in North Carolina were out of gas, according to Gas Buddy, while more than half the stations in Virginia, Georgia, South Carolina, and Washington, D.C. are running dry. And analysts warn those numbers may drift higher over the next 48 hours before starting to retreat. Also today, separately, Bloomberg is reporting that the Colonial pipeline paid Russian hackers nearly $5 million in a ransom. Lots to get to here. Let's jump into it now with Jim Mitchell. He is head of oil research at Refinitiv. Jim, thanks so much for joining us. First off, you heard what President Biden had to say about the Colonial pipeline. What do you make of what the U.S. is trying to do in terms of getting fuel to where it needs to go in a timely manner?
I think the president, along with the industry, is doing absolutely everything they can to get gasoline to the affected areas. Being from Houston here, we see this frequently when we have hurricanes. The industry is pretty good at doing this, and I know that's little comfort to the people that are parked in lines waiting to get gasoline. But this is a short-term thing.
How short term do you think it's going to be, Jim?
I suspect everybody who wants to get gasoline is going to be able to get gasoline and as much as they want by Sunday. With that said, I suspect probably tomorrow and into Saturday, we're going to see these lines that you have displaying here will dwindle a lot.
What do you make of these reports coming out of Bloomberg that Colonial Pipeline actually negotiated with these cyber criminals and gave them $5 million? If true, I have to think this sets an absolutely horrific precedent.
Yes. I heard this over the weekend, and I also heard it was paid in cryptocurrency. Don't know which one. I have no way to validate that, but that's what the rumor was around the industry here in Houston. Yes, it does set a very bad precedence. I don't know what to make of it. I fully suspect that the FBI is heavily involved with this, and I hope that kind of information doesn't make it out into the public, because then it's just going to get much, much worse.
So, Jim, I think a lot of folks are asking questions about the likelihood of some of these attacks to happen again, if there is going to be copycat attacks. I think that $5 million ransom, of course, might only serve to inspire other hacking groups. So then going forward, how much risk do you think some of these vulnerabilities are going to be presenting to the oil markets?
Well, I've been in the industry for quite a while, and after 9/11, we saw a big advancement in security. But most of that security involved the physical presence around refineries and pipelines and other oil production facilities. It was around 2014, 15 that we started to see companies increase their cybersecurity protection. And it's important to note in this situation, this criminal group did not affect the pipeline operation. This was in the corporate aspect of Colonial Pipeline. So that, I guess that if there is good news in this, that is the good news. That's one of the reasons they were able to get the pipeline back up and running once they made sure that everything was safe and protected and no restart issues. Going forward, clearly this is a wake-up call. I would not be surprised if Colonial does have, and prior to this had substantial protection in place. And it's impossible to know, maybe the hackers tried to get to the operation of the pipeline and couldn't, and then went after some of this other data. I was at one of the owners of Colonial Pipeline. I worked for one of those companies for quite a while, and I can tell you they have significant protection, cyber attack protection in their critical facilities. Now, is it enough? I guess there's only one way to find out.
And Jim, I don't know if you saw, there's a former cybersecurity expert who used to work for the Department of Homeland Security, Chris Krebs, who spoke to lawmakers just last week, just days before this ransomware attack. And he actually used the word pandemic. He said that we could reach pandemic proportions when it comes to cyber attacks. He pointed out a major vulnerability, saying cybercrime is rooted in what he called a digital dumpster fire of our seemingly pathological need to connect everything to the internet. Do you think that's it? Is that our weak spot, the fact that so many things are the information superhighway that at the end of the day is not all that secure?
I would definitely agree with that. But there's a reason that's being done, and the reason that's being done is for efficiency, and it's difficult to not pursue that path. So I think that we'll continue to pursue that path as an industry with much heightened digital protection. I don't really see a way around that.
Curious to know, Jim, what you think, and of course we just heard from President Biden, but going forward, how the U.S. government is going to be reacting to this. A lot of folks have said that part of the vulnerabilities lie in the fact that our infrastructure, at least when it comes to oil, is so fragmented. We saw that just a couple of months ago in Texas. So what can be done going forward, save each company trying to beef up their cybersecurity? Do you imagine that some policy changes might be coming out of this to create some kind of unified security system, at least on American infrastructure, at least as it applies to our energy markets?
It's hard to say, and that's a very difficult thing to legislate because the assets are so different, the impacts are so different, the companies involved are of all different sizes and sophistications. I think that's a very difficult thing to legislate. With that said, it is clearly in the company's interest to do this. And this event shows the cost that certainly could happen. And this could have been a lot worse than it actually was. It definitely got everybody's attention. So I don't suspect that there'll be legislation on this, but there clearly will be corporate action on this.
Jim, before we let you go, we're seeing sort of this irrational run on gas at stations up and down the East Coast. We heard President Biden tell folks not to panic. Is there enough fuel out there right now? Should people be running and filling up their gas tanks and holding on to some extra?
No. And it's, how do you stop people from irrational purchasing? We saw that here in the Houston area during the freeze in February. I don't know. I don't know how to stop it. I'm not sure anybody does. There will be fuel in these areas in the next couple of days on an ongoing presence. Remember, we had a lot of fuel in storage coming into 2021 because of what happened in 2020. Because of this area in the southeast part of the U.S. has been recovering so well from COVID, the economic activity has been improving. That gasoline, more gasoline than diesel glut is gone. And the most vulnerable area is Virginia, West Virginia, down the Atlantic coast, Florida, Georgia. That is the most vulnerable spot in the U.S. But with that said, there's a lot of refinery capacity online. And once we get past this hurdle, I don't suspect that there'll be any issue. Gas prices will probably stay elevated through the year, but we're not going to see a shortage of gasoline.
All right. Well, we like that. Jim Mitchell, head of oil research at Refinitiv, thanks so much for being with us.